Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. We are wrapping up week 6 of my pantry and freezer challenge, and it is going just as good as ever. I am really enjoying not going to the grocery store, not thinking about a grocery list. Our freezer is still full of meat. In fact, we used our first 2 pounds of venison just last night. You'll see what we made with that. The kids are enjoying it. I would say the only area that is lacking variety right now would be school lunches. If the kids were home, it would be easier to make a simple hot lunch every day, but some of those things just wouldn't transport as well to school. So we're keeping things pretty basic. We had some lunch meat in the freezer that we've definitely pulled out. They've had quite a bit of peanut butter and honey, peanut butter and jelly. But let's jump into week 6 and you can see what we ate. I realized last week that I had been relying a little too heavily on my white flour. My simple white bread recipe is delicious and easy, but it's not nearly as nutritious as freshly ground wheat. So at the beginning of week 6, I went ahead and ground a whole bunch of wheat for the week ahead. I have a Nutramil wheat grinder. I've had it for, probably like 12 years. It's fantastic. I get my wheat from Azure Standard. And if I go ahead and just about fill this hopper with wheat berries, it grinds enough wheat for the whole week. And as I use it, I keep the excess in the freezer until I'm ready to use it. And I've got it all used up within about 3 or 4 days. While touring my pantry, some of you have asked why I store my home canned foods without the ring. This is why. I pulled this jar of potatoes out and the lid popped right off. And I don't even mean popped. It just came right off in my hand. If there had been a ring on this jar, it may have caused the lid to stick a little better, and I could have possibly used it and gotten my family really sick. So I would just really emphasize store your jars with the rings off, and that way you know for sure if your jar has a proper seal. You can see here the wheat is almost finished grinding. I love taking this lid off after I've ground some fresh wheat. The flour is totally warm and it smells good. The first thing I did was whip up some whole wheat bread to make sandwiches for the week. Here you can see it rising for the second time. And here are 2 beautiful loaves that lasted us actually about 3 days. One night I put white beans in the Instant Pot and I pulled a bag of ham out of the freezer that had been in there since Thanksgiving. I chopped the ham up into small bits, gave little pieces of fat to the dog, and we had a delicious comfort meal of white beans with ham, and I think I made cornbread that night also. You can see here that we made a lot of peanut butter and honey for the week for lunches, and this is my daughter Annie eating the last few bites of her breakfast burrito that I forgot to take a picture of before they were completely consumed. It was just scrambled eggs, cheese, and a tortilla. I've kind of been a willing garbage disposal lately when it comes to healthy foods in the fridge that need to get used up. So my sense of smell and taste are still gone from COVID. So I can taste absolutely nothing and I can smell absolutely nothing. So this particular morning I made 2 scrambled eggs. There was a wrinkly squash left in the fridge, some green powder that's from Trim Healthy Mama. It is spirulina and moringa leaf powder, which are super good for you. About 1/4 of an onion, some salt and pepper and garlic. I don't even know why I seasoned it because I could taste none of it and I knew it was great for me. As you know, we now have an entire freezer full of venison, but this is the last of our ground beef. I used this to make meatloaf this night. It was my twins' birthday request: meatloaf, mashed potatoes, and broccoli. I forgot to take a picture of our 2 massive meatloafs, but you can see it here on their plate, and they were so happy. One night, the kids were unloading the dishwasher and they said, "Mom, what do we do with all these jars? They won't fit in the cabinet." So I've been trying to get in the habit when we have too many jars and not enough cabinet space to go ahead and fill them with something I can preserve and stick right back in the pantry. This particular night, I filled them with beans and water to soak, and the next day I canned them up, and now we have 14 quarts of a variety of beans back in the pantry. Sunday morning, my son Owen, who is 14, decided he wanted to make sausage, eggs, and cheese grits for the family for breakfast. First, he shredded the cheese. Then he added the grits to our chicken stock. We always mix in a little heavy cream at the end, salt and pepper, and a little bit of garlic. This particular morning, he used sharp cheddar, and it was delicious. This might have been the largest pot of cheese grits that we've ever had. Everyone enjoyed it. I think this might have been the first time in my adult life that we had leftover meatloaf. That's because I made so much. I wanted to have leftovers. And so right after breakfast, I made some more whole wheat bread so that we could have meatloaf sandwiches for lunch that day. I've never had a meatloaf sandwich, but it sounded good to me. I mean, it's kind of like a version of a burger, right? I cannot even begin to tell you how strange it is to be baking homemade bread and not be able to smell it. Nor could I taste this delicious looking sandwich. It was a pretty big hit. The kids especially loved it. After lunch that day, I really had a lot of energy for the first time since being sick, so I decided to make another really large batch of blueberry muffins. I was going to finish off this crumb topping that had been in my freezer since last April, and I also finished off our last 4 cups of frozen blueberries. They looked amazing. Tell me in the comments below, if you are a frequent baker, do you set a timer, or is your nose your timer? My nose has been my timer for a long time, and now that it is not working, I burnt muffins for the first time in a very long time. I was so disappointed, but thankfully it was only probably 1 out of 5 dozen muffins were burnt on the bottom. One of my daughters had requested chicken and dumplings for supper. I had forgotten just how quick and easy chicken and dumplings is from scratch. So I pulled 3 quarts of chicken broth and 2 quarts of chicken from my pantry and very quickly whipped up some dumpling dough. I used the copycat recipe from Cracker Barrel. I mixed it in my mixer just until it all came together, and then I rolled it out and used a pizza cutter. I like to cut my dumplings into bite-sized pieces rather than the larger ones that you would find at like Cracker Barrel. Once all the dumplings were in the pot, I let it simmer for about 20 minutes or so to thicken up. Man, this was so good. I actually added a little extra salt to my bowl because I can tell when I'm eating something salty or something sweet. And when I added just a little extra salt, it was extra satisfying, even though I couldn't actually taste the flavor. I had forgotten about these rye wassa crackers that I had in one of the drawers in the island, so I pulled out some Laughing Cow cheese that had been in the fridge for months, a few slices of deli turkey, and some hot cinnamon spice tea. It made for a delightful snack. Beef stroganoff was on the menu, so I went out in search of fresh eggs to make pasta. Unfortunately, all of a sudden in the last week or so, the chickens have really been on strike. I'm sure it's from a lack of daylight, but this day I only found 2 eggs, and they weren't even where they belonged. They were in the coop. My plan was to triple my favorite pasta recipe, so I had to dip into our water-glassed eggs. I needed 9 eggs. I got 2 from the chicken coop, so I'm scooping 7 more out of this jar. I'm not entirely sure if this egg has been cracked for quite a while or if I did it with this metal spoon, but either way, this egg went in the trash. Water-glassed eggs always end up a little bit runny, especially the longer that they sit in your water glass solution. So as you can see, these 2 fresh ones held together nicely. The yolks don't break. Well, maybe one of them did. But all the rest of these eggs that had come out of the water glass solution are very runny. They still taste and smell completely fresh, but the liquid inside is just a little bit runnier. It doesn't hold together quite as well as fresh eggs. This pasta recipe calls for 4 ingredients: olive oil, eggs, flour, and salt. I'll put a link to the recipe in the description box below. You totally don't need a mixer. You don't need a pasta machine. All you really need are your hands, a rolling pin, and I have to admit a pizza cutter is really handy for cutting pasta, but you don't need any fancy tools, and it's such an easy recipe to come together. And there's nothing like the flavor of fresh pasta. Once your ingredients come together to make a dough ball, you wrap it in plastic and let it rest for 30 minutes on the counter. I took the time while it was resting to go ahead and cook the meat and make the sauce. Beef stroganoff is one of those recipes that you could totally tweak according to what you have. This particular recipe called for cream of mushroom soup, sour cream, beef broth, parsley, onion, but you could really just make a simple beef gravy using butter, flour, beef broth, and then maybe adding some cream or half and half. This recipe usually calls for mushrooms, but let's face it, I'm on week 6 of this pantry challenge. There are no fresh vegetables left in this house. Because I tripled our pasta dough recipe, it took a good 2 hours to get this dinner on the table, but I had no regrets. My daughter helped me crank out the pasta. We let it dry for just a little bit in sheets before we ran it through the fettuccine slicer, and this was the end product. We had so much pasta, and the meal was delicious. Again, I wish so much that I could have tasted it, but I got from all the oohs and ahs over dinner that it was delicious. There are 2 weeks left in this pantry and freezer challenge, and as much as I'm enjoying it, I'm really looking forward to that first big trip to Sam's and Aldi. I am missing salad. I'm missing tomatoes, all of the fresh veggies that we are spoiled to find in the grocery store, even throughout winter. And it makes me extra excited to be planting the garden and imagining all the fresh veggies that I'll be having in just a few months. If you've been participating in this challenge with me, let me know in the comments below how it's going. Have you tried any new recipes? Are you getting bored? Have you run out of food? I will most definitely be making this an annual challenge. If you want to see how the last 2 weeks of this challenge turn out, be sure and subscribe so you're notified when I post future videos. Thanks for watching.